Good evening. My name is Nancy Tessman. I'm the Executive Director of the Fort Vancouver Regional Library District. And I'm very, very happy to be the one who gets to welcome you here this evening. And I'm going to start with this. We're here in great part because of the imagination and leadership of two people. And so I want you to take the time with me to thank Dini Gregar from... I take it you already know who she is. So, for those of you who may not, she is the driving force behind the digital media program at Washington State University at Vancouver. And it was really, in most credit should be given for Dini for having truly the understanding of the importance of this idea in the community, and she's making a huge mark on what is happening both here and nationally as a result of the program. I also want to make sure you know that Jack Berkman, our city council member, who obviously knows a good thing when he sees it, also understood that the importance of the impact of the digital world in our lives and in our community deserves attention and conversation and an opportunity to really help understand what we can do to help shape the world we live in. And in addition, I think you need to recognize that this was one of those projects that was wonderful to watch as it rolled out, because when you have a good idea, it's like investment, in venture capital. People want to have a part of it. And so from the very beginning, we had a lot of partners who started to express interest because of the recognition that this is an important idea. Ranging from, obviously, the people at Washington State University of Vancouver, the foundation, as well as the COOP parents. We also had the city of Vancouver stepping up. We had, from my point of view, the Friends of the Vancouver Community Library, the foundation of the library district. We also had the great good graces of people like the Evergreen Public School Program and the Vancouver Public Schools, and we had the printing that was donated by Adio Printing, and also a very generous contribution that came from the Columbian. And these are entities that have a great investment in the importance of the digital world, but they also really understand the implications. One other very, very important contributor was Comcast. So I'd like you to have a chance to meet the representative from Comcast tonight, Theresa Davis.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for having me here before our esteemed speaker. I want to just share a couple of things. I read the book on the way home from a business trip in San Diego, and I was reflecting on it, and it was a lovely, lovely sunshine. I mean, I can't even believe the sunshine. Sorry to say that. It was lovely. But what I'll say is, as I was reflecting on it, I started to think about it, and the other reason why Comcast participated was because we run a program called Internet Essentials. And that program is for kids who can't afford the internet, for kids on free and reduced lunch who may or may not have the resources to access important things like the internet. And as I was reading the book, I was sort of reflecting, and thanks to Douglas, we have some rules around the internet, and rules that you can listen to or rules that you can break, but at least we know what they are, right? And it's almost like a playground, if you think about it. If you want to boil it down to its most simple piece, the internet is like a playground. And we have rules on a playground, but you also want to make sure that everybody can play on the playground and that everybody has access, and that there's not people who are standing outside of the playground who can't necessarily play with the rules or play without the rules. So I think that's why it's important for us to participate here today, is because we want to make sure that as many people as possible know about this program. And as I go around all the time and I talk about Internet Essentials. And as I was, I'll tell you a quick funny story, and that's that I have gotten to be known a little bit going around and talking about it. And one Sunday I just moved to Tigard, and I decided that it was okay to go to the store with a hat, yoga pants, and no makeup, when somebody said, "You're the Internet Essentials lady." And I was like, I have titles or whatever, but Internet Essentials lady is my all-time favorite, because she was this teacher at Tigard Elementary School that I'd spoken to about 9 months before, and she said, "I have to tell you, I thought it was some marketing employee from Comcast, and I didn't listen, and I didn't really care all that much." And then a kid actually, I noticed he was behaving erratically. He wasn't doing his homework. And one day in frustration, I said to him, "Why on earth aren't you doing your homework?" And she said, and he said, I can't do this at home. I don't have any way to look any of this up." And he expressed the same frustration to me. And all of a sudden I realized he didn't have a way to look it up, because a lot of my stuff, they had to look up on the internet. And this kid, obviously his parents couldn't afford it. And so I talked to his mom, we got him Internet Essentials, and it made a difference to him. And now I talk to all of my kids' parents who are on free and reduced lunch about Internet Essentials. So I wanted to thank you. And she walked off. I didn't get her name. I've been telling the story. If anybody ever hears about a Tigard school teacher, I'd love to meet her again. But it just illustrated to me the difference that it can make on a kid's life, having access when they didn't have it before. So my ask of you is, if you know anybody, and I'm sure you do, please tell them about the program. So Nancy, back to you.
Well, I'm not really sure all of you would be aware of this, but Douglas Rushkoff is kind of like the librarian's dream guest. Because, Mr. Rushkoff, you're very smart. Librarians really like smart men. You can be, you're a fine writer. You're a teacher. You're a social critic, which is always entertaining. You're a theorist and a filmmaker. I mean, I can keep going here. You have these this web of skills and abilities that can make connections. You make connections. I'm not sure everybody understands that that's really what libraries are about. Libraries are about connecting people and ideas. And I know that over the years I will be here, you'll hear me say this so many times, but I'm going to start here again. We are about books, but we are not only about books. Books are the packages. We're about the ideas inside, whatever the package is, whether or not that is a lovely, beautiful, bound volume, or whether or not it's a little bit going across a little line, or a conversation, or a film, or a photograph. We're about ideas. And you are, sir, a quintessential idea man. Librarians bemoaned the moment when the card catalog went away, and oftentimes we were kind of described as Luddites or not wanting to let go of the old technology. It really wasn't about the little catalog cards. It was about the serendipity that came from the fact that when you were flipping through the catalog, and my God, so many of you are so young you don't even remember that, but for some of us, it was that serendipity. It was the fact that I might have been looking at Marshall McLuhan and I ran into Terence McKenna as I was flipping through the alphabet. And so we made these kinds of connections, and to a great extent, what's so exciting, I can still remember the moment that I was first introduced to really what the internet would become. And it was like this incredible bomb blast of possibilities, because you could see this powerful tool and its ability to make connections. And so you have been able to manage this career with making the connections that we need to better understand this changing, exciting, frustrating, frightening world. Sometimes I think about the fact that if I had been able to live your life, and you know how you play that wonderful game where, you know, if you have a dinner party, who would you want to invite to that dinner party, whether or not they're alive or dead or even fantasy? started thinking about the cadre of people that have affected your life. And I started thinking about Marshall McLuhan. Timothy Leary, I thought, hey, what a good dinner party guest. And then I started reading more and learning other people that you could potentially have invited to that dinner table. And it blew me away that you could have someone like Marshall McLuhan or Neil Postman. I mean, I remembered teaching as a subversive activity. These were things that I kind of cut my educating teeth on. And then I realized that you could also have Aaron Sorkin at the table. And it just made me that much more interested and, quite frankly, that much more trusting that you have the ability to bring to the question that we have as a community here a range that includes the intellectual to really an appreciation and a clear respect and love for what we might call popular culture in a way that I thought was so egalitarian that I think that it made me feel comfortable, that it wasn't, you know, going to be this arrogant guy who knows so much and teaches at Princeton and can't bring it down or bring it to a community like ours. And the reason I say that is that my husband Charlie and I recently went and had lunch at the Mint Cafe here over on Main Street. And as I left, and you've never been to Vancouver before, right? Okay, and I'm a newcomer. So, you know, we're having our lunch, we're walking out the door, and there's that wonderful Keep Vancouver Normal at the Mint Cafe. And I can tell you this, and I think you probably already figured it out, Vancouver's far from normal, you guys. But it's because Vancouver is actually extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And as a newcomer, I can tell you that. It is a very interesting, diverse, smart, creative, complex place. But it makes me feel really excited to be a part of a community that wants to invite someone like Douglas Rushkoff to come and talk with us about important ideas, because these are indeed very important ideas. I'm very proud that we've been a part of this project. It is the first of what I hope will be many opportunities for all of us to be willing to engage in conversations that are not always easy, but are going to always be interesting. And if we're good, living in this wonderful temple of ideas that is about all sorts of ideas and choices, the polarities, some of which you talk about, the things that come to us like the internet that are both good and ill, both exciting and frightening. It's that ability to understand that we have to live in a place that appreciates that that's part of what makes our life rich. And so I'm very excited to hear from you and very, very pleased to welcome you officially to the Vancouver Public Library and to the Vancouver community. Thank you.
That's a librarian. Now you know. You know what I mean? Exactly. There you go. The way she was describing the library is really kind of how I look at digital media. I mean, what she was describing was the biases of the library environment. Right? To say that if you can actually look at the library and think about it, right? Looking at the picture of what a library is and how it works. Look at it objectively for just a minute, which is hard to do because usually we go to the library and you just get your book and you do your thing. But if you sit down and look at it and say, okay, it's a place where I get my books, yeah, but what is it? Right? It's these shelves and shelves of books. It's all these books in the same place. Right? So as a librarian, what she's able to say, because she thinks about it, she's a library scientist, in addition to a service librarian, she's able to say, well, the underlying agenda, the presumption of a library is that all these ideas belong in the same place. Right? That all these things are on the same shelves. But what she was talking about, what she liked about me, is basically lateral thinking. Right? That there's all these different ideas, and I could go into this subject or that one or this one, and sort of find parallels or find equivalences, find patterns, recognize patterns in all these different areas, which is what a library is. Then you hear when she's describing the card catalog, it's like, okay, I understand this is a way, someone came up with this way in order to find your book. The interesting thing about a card catalog, for those of you who are too young to know about the card catalog, is every book in the library might have had 10 different cards in the card catalog, right? So it would be listed under the author's name, but then it might be listed in the sort of the Dewey Decimal-like subject that it's in. Like for me, I was always in theater theory, you know, sort of 1800s European, you know, Chekhov, Ibsen, Shaw theory about, and I was, what was that in Dewey, 812 around there? Yeah, give or take. But I knew what it was like. You go in there, and what you're getting is not just the alphabetical list, which is valuable enough, and you'll run into McKenna instead of McLuhan or whoever, but you're getting the knowledge of all the people who categorize this information before you. So what you're getting, without going to the university, without reading the history of theater and all that, what I'm getting is the organizational benefit of the theater historians and theater history librarians who've decided this knowledge goes together. Right, so my 30 seconds in the card catalog, or 5 minutes, is informed by the 50 or 100 years of thought into what goes with what. Right, so there's what media theorists would call, or digital people would call, there's metadata implicit in that, right, which is powerful. So when we saw the card catalog go away, it wasn't just like, you know, oh, now people are, you know, talking on their cell phones on the street and we're not meeting anybody anymore. It was losing access to all of these generations of librarians who said, this kind of goes with that, kind of goes with that, kind of goes with that. And I understand, as a young, rather revolutionary activist kind of a person, it's great, we're freeing ourselves from the shackles of the disciplines, right? That the history weighing us down, telling us that Albee goes with Chekhov, when I know Edward Albee really goes with Sam Shepard, God damn it, you know? Even if I'm that angry about it, I deserve to be at the table with the librarians arguing about where Albee goes, right? Rather than just chalking it up to Google and saying, well, now everything's going to search deep anyway, so I'm just going to find the thing I want and get out of here, right? It's like a trip to the Walmart. Although they don't want you to find the thing and get out of there either, do they? Right? If it's milk or eggs or something, it's all the way in the back, past the ski poles and the ammo and the, you know, God knows what. Just for that impulsive shell casing purchase. Now, the library we can do this with, because the library is very apparent to us. Right? The library is not, as a technology, the library is not mysterious or obfuscated from us. We can see it. It's there. I mean, and as kids, we used to learn library. We used to go once a week, you know, in elementary school, and you learn library, Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature, all these ancient, obsolete, gone ways of finding information and stories and things. But it was apparent, right? It wasn't, however, you know, Byzantine it might have appeared, it was relatively transparent when you compare it to, say, Facebook, right? Most of us, to this day, if we ask ourselves, what's Facebook for? What are we going to say? It's here to help us make friends, right? What's Facebook for? It's to help us link up with our friends and keep up to date on their things and see their baby pictures, right? That's what Facebook's for, right? And if you go into the boardroom at Facebook and you see Mark Zuckerberg talking with his you know, lieutenants, I'm sure they're sitting there thinking, how are we going to help little Johnny make more friends that are enduring, lasting relationships? Right? Is that what they're thinking? No. Right? What they're thinking is, how are we going to exploit Johnny's social graph? Right? His social graph is basically the data footprint that he creates every time he interacts with Facebook. Right? Your every keystroke is being recorded by, nothing against big data, where is he? There, he's got a job. Oh, he just got it. We'll see. We'll see. So he's just got a job at a big data company, but I'm going to entrain him. not do it. It's true. He's going to destroy them from the inside out. So what Facebook is really doing is doing what's called big data analysis on its users, right? Which are the people who use Facebook, to see who's going to be gay, who's going to get pregnant, who's going to go on a diet, and how can we advertise to them in advance, right? To get them to be more like that. If this person maybe could be convinced to go on a diet, we know who they are, right? We know who they are, and not for any logical reasons. We know who they are because they have a car with 2 doors and a cat, and they're this age, and they watch that Netflix show. I mean, it's like random data. They don't care. There's no logic behind it. Right, so what Facebook is there to do is to monetize our social graphs on behalf of its paying customers. Right? Its paying customers are market researchers and advertisers and big data researchers. So what does that make us? Right, we're not Facebook's customers. We're not paying Facebook. We're Facebook's product. Right? We're the thing being sold to them. And we're not just Facebook's product. We're Facebook's labor force. Facebook has, what, 10, 12,000 people there working 8 hours a day, but it's got, so they claim, what, 2 billion people sitting meticulously going over their social profile, and which movies do I like the best, and who's my friend and who's not, am I single, am I not, am I this, is this the best picture, is that one? It's as if the profiles replace the mirror, is the way we print, right? And who are we doing that for? Do you think your friends are looking at that? Do you think they care? They don't. They're busy looking at their own profile, right? The only ones who are looking at that are Facebook's customers, right? The people who, when you do that change, you've given them a new data point. Oh, this is a person who just went from, right, from Mel Gibson to Mel Torme or whatever. You know, what does that mean? Well, that's a weird one. That's going to set off bells, actually. You know, Mel Gibson to Tom Cruise are not really set off too many bells. But they've had a data change, right? So, and we just leave more. We leave more. We leave more. Right? Our inability to see what's going on, our inability to parse the users from the used, our inability to understand when are we a customer, when are we a product, when are we an unpaid worker, or when are we something worse, really is a direct result of our, let's call it, digital illiteracy. Right? It's a direct result, it goes in direct proportion to the extent this media seems mysterious to us. Right? The more mysterious the medium, the more compelling its message. Right? I mean, they don't call this stuff on television programming for nothing. Right? They're not programming a television set, they're not programming a schedule. Right? You pick your channel and you accept your programming. You know, and when I was a kid, that box was magic. Remember the box? I mean, TV, for those of you, it used to be this box. And there was a tube inside it. There was a different thing. And you had channels and stuff. And there was this man who would be on the news, passed away, named Walter Cronkite, and he used to end the broadcast, he used to say, and that's the way it is. That's the way it is. April 17th, 2001. I mean, can you imagine one of the clowns on there ending their broadcast today by saying, and that's the way it is? You know, they basically go, well, that's all they can do. That's what we know so far. Right? He's in custody, he's not in custody, he's in custody, he's not in custody, he's on the internet, he's not on the internet, he is on the internet, he's not a baby. Good night. And now this. You know, there's that, they can't. They don't have that authority. But right, but television was this box, it was magical. And we believed what it said because it was magic. It was like transubstantiation. Anybody who could get their face in a box in your living room must be telling the truth. Seriously. It's crazy. I mean, now we say not. But then, oh my gosh, people who could do magic are believed. Right, where I realized this, and it may seem like a tangent, but we're allowed to talk about pop culture here. I've been given permission. I mean, where I realized this as a baby media theorist was watching the third and still worst of the Star Wars movies, Return of the Jedi. And it's worse than Jar Jar Binks one, actually. It is on a different lag. Well, you like those little teddy bear things? They were cute. They were supposed to be Wookiees, you know. But they didn't have money for Wookiees, so they did Ewoks, which is backwards Wookiee, Ewok. It's another story. But I was watching this with my friend, and it was there's this moment when Han Solo and Luke Skywalker get taken prisoner by the Ewoks. You remember this? They're all tied up. Princess Leia is free. She's sitting there by the fire. They don't care about her. But they have these guys tied up, and the robots end up getting Luke and Han Solo out of captivity by telling a story. Yeah. Right? C-3PO, in Ewok language, tells them the story about the Millennium Falcon and the rebels and how they're going to blow up the Death Star. And R2-D2 is projecting a holographic image in there of the Death Star and all the different ships going around it and then blowing it up. And you see the little Ewoks, right? Little primitive Ewoks who like have blowing darts and stuff. These are a primitive species. They're sitting there. Look, they've never seen a holographic projection before. You see the little Ewok eyes going back and forth, in their little mother's arms, watching this thing. And they are so bowled over by this story and the technology through which it's told, right, that they not only release Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and party with them and all that, but they fight a war on their behalf. Right? They fight a war against Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers in which Ewoks die. And we watch them getting slammed against trees and things, the little baby teddy bear things dying. And when that Ewok, remember when the Ewok gets slammed against the tree and the other one goes, oh! You know,
How did he get it?
Watch it on the tape. We'll do it later. We'll do it later. Oh my God. That's good. This is one of those legal pot states, isn't it? This is the academics clapping. Let the be that as it may.
Wrote the bill.
Oh my God. But it was at that moment when that Ewok died and the other one cried, sadly, that I thought, what if Darth Vader had gotten down to that moon of Endor and told his story first? With his pyrotechnics and his thing, oh, these horrible little people, and they don't take care of their technology, and their spaceships are dirty, and they consort with Wookiees, and yuck. And show them, the Ewoks would have fought for them. The Ewoks would have fought for them. And that's when I realized it's the power of the technology through which the story is told matched with the eloquence of the storyteller wins the day. That's how we program people. That's how we program populations. Right? So you have a mysterious medium and a compelling message. Right? A mysterious technology, one that's still mystified, one that's still unknown how it's working, how it's happening, and someone who has basic storytelling or narrative ability. You win. Right? You win. And for me, that's what television was. Right? Through most of my life. Right up until about the time of the remote control, which actually came into our family. Televisions, you used to have to walk up and turn the knob. And I'm thinking about the way television works. Right? Television works with a simple Aristotelian narrative. Right? You create a character the audience likes. That character goes through a series of trials and gets into trouble until you can't take it anymore. The audience can't take any more tension, and then the character finally finds a solution. Right? That Arnold Schwarzenegger finds a gun, or someone finds a romance, or whatever. You win, and then you get relief. Right? Crisis, climax, relief. Right? It's sort of the male structure of pleasure and sleep. Right? It's dominated for the last 2,000 years. Aristotle discovered it, and look at the mess we're in. Right? Right, and that same structure was used in television shows, in movies, in religions, and political campaigns, and in commercials. Right? And think of the 28-second or the 30-second television commercial. Right? The girl's going to go to the prom. Oh no, she has a zit. Right, what is she going to do? She tries popping it. Oh, it gets worse. She tries putting this stuff. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And then she finds Oxy 5. Right? Right? She puts it on, the psychedelic colors go all over her face. She makes it to the prom. Right now, if you're watching that commercial, if you're my dad or me as a kid watching that commercial, you're sitting back in the lazy boy with the popcorn on your lap. If you understand that this storyteller, this commercial is putting you in a state of anxiety, right? Unnecessary anxiety, until you get up to the top. Oh God, she popped the zit. Now it's oh my God. If you want to get out of this imposed state of anxiety, you got to take the popcorn off your lap, walk up to the television set, turn the dial to change the channel, adjust the rabbit ears, which we don't even have to get into what that is. The television used to come down from the sky. So, adjust the rabbit ears, and then you go sit down, right? Which is like what 30 calories of human effort to get out of this imposed state of anxiety. No one's going to do that. Right? I'd rather take 10 or 20 calories of anxiety than 30 calories of actually going and doing this thing. Plus, I have a nice, well-behaved, long attention span. I know how to watch things. But once you put a remote in my hand, I'm in that same commercial. They're putting me in a state of tension. Bam! I'm gone. 0.0001 calories of human effort. And I've escaped the spell of the storyteller and the imposed state of anxiety. Right? The remote control deconstructed the content of television. It broke C-3PO's story. Right? The medium was still mysterious, but bam, I'm out of the story. You're making me tense. Goodbye. Watch yourself. Watch a kid with a remote. It's not boredom. It's anger. Boredom's a secondary emotion. First, it's anger. What are you doing to me? Where are you taking me? I don't believe this. This is improbable. And this is cruel, or this is nasty, or I don't want to see the zit pop. Bam! Right, so remote control deconstructs the content of television. So we're no longer watching television. Now we're watching the television. You've watched yourself, unless it's really like Game of Thrones or something. You don't watch TV anymore. Here goes bam, there's the game. Oh, there's that movie. Oh, Law and Order. Oh, did she find it out? No, not yet. Okay, bam. Go through. Oh, go shopping. Oh, there's something. Oh, no. Too expensive. Right? You're watching the whole thing. You come back around. You'll get back around to Law and Order by the time they're sticking them on the witness stand. It's going to be fine. You know how to write it out. Right? You can go to the last channel, back and forth, AB. It's fine. We know that. All right, so the first interactive device, as far as I'm concerned, was the remote control. Second device was the joystick. Right? Most of us, if you're old, you remember the first time you played a video game. The same way our parents remember, like, the Kennedy assassination. Right? I mean, I was at the Concord Hotel in the Borscht Belt, and it was Pong. Right? For most of you, it was Pong. Right? It was Pong was basically two white squares, one on either side of the screen. They move up and down, and a little ball, a little dot, a pixel goes back and forth between them. Boop, 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 right? And would go back and forth. And it would go out, and you would take the little white square. The funnest part was even when the ball wasn't there, you just move the white square up and down really fast to try to sort of make a rectangle out of it. See? Right? The power of Pong was not, what a great simulation of table tennis, right? Now we're going to beat the Chinese the next time the Olympics come around because we're going to have all this great practice. Right? No, the joy of Pong was I can move the pixels on the screen. Right? This was the sacred turf. This was Walter Cronkite's turf. We didn't move pixels around. We didn't have VCRs. We didn't have video cameras yet. It was just, whoa. Right? The video game, the Nintendo joystick, the Odyssey joystick, demystified the medium. It demystified television, along with things like video cassette recorders and video cameras and all these other home electronics devices. Now the pixel was demystified. So we deconstructed the content. We dealt with C-3PO. We demystified the medium, which dealt with R2-D2 and his holographic projections. And then finally, what do we get? We get the keyboard and the mouse, which turns television from a read-only medium into a read-write medium. From something that you watch to something that you make. It turns it from a monitor into a portal. And it's funny, we now call it the monitor. It's anything but the monitor. Right now it's the window. You are as likely to speak through this thing as you are to get something out of this thing. Right? You've turned it into a DIY device, a communications portal. Now the problem with that, and this is ancient history for you guys, but 1994 and 95, they did studies and they found out the average internet-connected home was watching 9 hours less commercial television a week. And that was a crisis. Because this was back when the internet was a non-commercial service. You had to actually sign an agreement saying you weren't going to do commercial stuff on it because it was seen as too much of a public resource and too much of a safe space and a place where people could actually be smart and interact and do all these things. So we weren't going to let it become some strip mall, right? Who would do that? But it was a problem, right? So the effects of the remote control, the joystick, and the mouse really had to be reversed, and they were, right? And quite forcibly, right? The remote control, all this channel surfing, well, this was now called a disorder, right? Wired magazine understood that real estate online is infinite, but that human attention is actually limited, right? There's only so many eyeball hours in a day, as they might put it. So what are you going to do? Figure out ways to get people to pay better attention. I mean, is it coincidence that in the attention economy, as soon as we declare we're in an attention economy, that the rates of Ritalin prescription and ADD diagnosis start to skyrocket? Right? There's real kids with real sensory processing disorders and real spectrum disorders, but there's also something to be said about drugging children so they pay better attention in a world where someone is trying to manipulate them everywhere they set their eyes. Even in this town, anywhere you look, there's someone advertising something. There's certain kinds of ADD seem to me to be an adaptive response to a world where people are trying to program you everywhere you look. But using the remote, jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing, having that ability, I don't see it as a sickness. Right? That's actually a skill. I mean, it's a sickness if you have to do it all the time and you can't look in someone's eyes and you can't be with someone, but what is that? Right? The ability to serve channels was recontextualized, right, as a pathology. The demystification of the medium through the joystick, well, that was consciously remystified, right? When you used a computer, to use a computer in the old days meant to program a computer. There was no difference. It was transparent. You learned the commands. It was just what it was. We all understood. I'm going to make my computer into a word processor. Oh, Microsoft made this cool program. I'm now going to install it, and now I'm emulating a typewriter. Now I'm emulating a spreadsheet. Right? But the distance between the user and the programmer was very, very small. You understood how it worked. That's a problem, right? We don't want people understanding how this works. We need to remystify this so they can be programmed again. So what did we do? We get the interfaces that are really, really thick. Interfaces that put us so far away from the workings of the machine that there may as well be that warning that used to be on the back of electronics, warning, hazard of electric shock, do not open the back of this. I mean, this is on radios, that take like 4 volts of warning, danger, electric shock, do not replace this part, buy a new one. And how does Microsoft or Windows or Mac do that? Well, remember what the install program was in Windows? What did you use to install software in Microsoft? The wizard. Why did they come up with the wizard? Why did they pick the wizard? They didn't pick the chambermaid. She's not installing your program, right? It's not the hardware store guy. You like the chambermaid, huh? It's a fun town. It's the wizard, because the wizard's mysterious. Oh, this is magical. You can't understand this, you mere mortals. You need a wizard to drag the application into the applications directory. Woo! Magic.
Do that again.
No, but I'll give you an Ewok in private.
Birthday.
Birthday.
Oh, there's more to come. And finally, we remove the DIY, the do-it-yourself, the genuine interpersonal interactivity of the net by declaring we're in an information age. That's what we started to call this. An information age. Why? Because information is something you can download and pay for. Information is all those music files on Napster, all that stuff that you can get in iTunes. It's information. I mean, at best, we can blog and tweet. Right? You can have that sort of DIY interactive window, but do it on our platform and on our terms and with 140 characters. Or do it by picking which radio button in your Facebook profile, goes closest to you. You're allowed to express yourself all you want, as long as you use the detritus of corporate culture and reassemble it in some way that reflects you in our image.
Right.
You know, be friends with everybody online, as long as they're also own Honda Fits that are year 2004. That's really your group. Talk to them, you know, not your neighbors. Right? So for me, as I looked at this happen, I thought, dang, the read-write revolution, the thing that just changed my whole outlook more than any drug ever did, is now being neutralized by the agenda of a few corporations who are worried about not making as much money as they did before. You know, because they're not actually innovative and they don't know how to make money in the new realm. They'd rather just figure out, how are we going to make money the old way? Right? But the real beauty of the net era of the digital age was that we were going to move into potentially what I considered an open source reality. The minute that I learned programming, and not even good programming, I mean basic, silly little programming, the minute I understood that television was a read-write medium that had been forcibly held back, right, that the only reason television hadn't been a read-write medium up till then was because it's the way they were saving their files. Right? When you start playing with computers, you find that you save your first file, you have a choice. You're saving this as a read-only file, which means only you can read it, or that people can read it but they can't change it, or can you save it as a read-write file, which means anyone can change it and do something to it and edit it. And I realized that everything in the world were actually read-write files that we put some little laws on and made people believe they were read-only files. That all of this stuff was actually up for grabs. And there were all of these efforts historically to say, hey everybody, it's a read-write file, like the American Constitution. It's a way of saying we've got these sort of statutes, but this is open for innovation and amendment. And you can keep writing this. This is a work in progress. Right? It's what I saw in Judaism. Whereas when I look at the way Talmud was developed, the way Midrash is developed, the way Torah is talked about. Right? It's a read-write medium. The idea is it's an ongoing conversation. So I started writing all these books about different areas, saying, oh my gosh, the idea is to keep it alive. If you have a business, I wrote a book called Get Back in the Box. If you have a business, just try competence. It's radical, right? But the idea is actually try being the lead innovator in your field rather than just protecting your old property. If you want to try Judaism, hey, what about Judaism as an ongoing conversation? What about Judaism less as a religion than as the way we get over religion and start having a live, active conversation around a table about what do we believe, what are our laws, how do we become more ethical? I looked at government that way. I wrote a little book called Open Source Democracy, saying that genuine e-democracy is not just going to be voting on little people meters or those little lines that go up and down on CNN during a debate, but actually participating in government as a collective process, something that actually ended up looking a bit like Occupy, if you will, a sort of deep collaboration. So I wrote all these things, but then I came back to the internet and realized, oh my gosh, the thing that is the source of this original inspiration for me, the original open source read-write participatory digital thing, was closed down and stupid. That instead of the net being this place where people were expressing themselves and participating, reprogramming, not reality, but just reprogramming programs, they were just accepting stuff off the shelf at face value. Right? We needed to apply the technological open source paradigm to technology itself, where it was gone, where it was almost the least likely place to find that kind of innovation was in the place that had given it to me to begin with. You know, so I started to argue then this idea of program or be programmed. You know, we got language, right? We didn't just learn how to listen, we learned how to speak. We get text, we don't just learn how to read, we learn how to write. Now we get computers, we learn how to use them, we don't learn how to program them. Right? And then they always come back to me. Even, you know, Levi Morozov comes back and he's dissing me in public saying, Oh, well, you don't need to know how to program your computer, just like you don't need to know how to fix your car. You have an auto mechanic for that. I'm not talking about the difference between an auto mechanic and a driver. I'm talking about the difference between a driver and a passenger. Right? You don't have to know how to open up your computer and fix it, and change the power supply, and fix a dead pixel on the screen. But how a computer works, yeah, it would be good for you to be drivers instead of passengers. It's like Miss Daisy, I mean, God bless her, but she had to trust Morgan Freeman, right? Well, whoever, her driver. She had to trust the driver. And that's fine if you trust your driver. Do you trust Mark Zuckerberg? Do you trust whoever's running this one and that one? I don't trust these people. Trusting them is like sitting in the back of the car, like Miss Daisy, except you've got curtains drawn over all the windows, and you say, take me to the nearest supermarket. And Morgan's like, okay, Miss Daisy. Oh, you know, they closed that supermarket. I'm taking you to this one instead. Did they really close it? How do you know? How do you verify? You can't. You just go where they take you. But that's the difference. And it's not just a car. Although if we did know how our cars work, if we understood the biases of the automobile, before GM ended up lobbying for our suburbs to be put driving distance from the places we work, making cars mandatory, we may have thought about that twice before we got in this situation. You know, if the average worker had thought, well, I can take an hour of my day, after operating heavy machinery all day, I can take an hour of my day and sit on this streetcar and read the paper, or I can, after my 8 hours of operating heavy machinery all day, I can sit in a car and operate heavy machinery another hour all the way to my home. Except it's heavy machinery that I pay for and that I have insurance for and that I can run people over and that causes me great stress. And we live in a world where we each spend, what, a day and a half a week paying for the car we used to get there. Oops. Right, so maybe knowing a little auto mechanics wouldn't have been terrible either. Not auto mechanics, but the mechanics of the automotive universe we are moving into. So there's really two kinds of literacy I'm asking us to consider. Right? Some of us are too old or set in our ways for the first. Right? The first is understanding computers like an engineer. Right? The actual, how does this work? The code. Understanding BASIC or COBOL. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. You don't have to know that, but it's a great language. It's a great language. I'm sorry, it's a great language. Object Pascal, right? No, learning Java or CSS or HTML, learning one of the basic languages, even not being good enough at it to really use it, but being good enough at it just to know what it is so powerful. It's like none of us can write Finnegan's Wake, right? Just as none of us can write the algorithm that Goldman Sachs is using to rape all of us blind, right? That's okay. That's for some Stanford graduate. And, you know, I understand that we're not going to be great programmers, but to understand just the basic idea of what it is, just like understanding that there's an alphabet and it makes these words and that's how it works, is useful, right? But the arguments for teaching code to kids, though, are huge, right? One is our innovative competitiveness globally, right? They're teaching code in Estonia, in elementary school, using Codecademy, where I advise. They teach it in Estonia. They teach it in Iraq, for God's sake. I mean, they're teaching it in pretty much every developed nation except ours. They're teaching code to kids, not because they want kids to be boring, not because they think every kid's going to be a great coder, but 1 out of 100 kids might be a great coder, right? So out of how many 100 million, that makes a bunch. You know, but right now, a place like China's churning out maybe 100,000 programmers for every 2 of ours. You know, that's a bad numbers game if you're talking about global competitiveness. It's a really bad numbers game if you're talking about military competitiveness. Right? I've talked to the generals. I talked to General Elder at the Air Force. He thinks we're 1 generation away from losing military superiority because of our weakness in cyber defense. He's got a ton of kids who are happy to come and fly drones. Great drone flyers. They're great at the Twitch. They're great at playing the games. But he's got no one who wants to come in and program the drones. You know, meanwhile, we got Microsoft outsourcing security programming to China, and the government being forced to use it. They're not allowed to go Linux. The government, the Pentagon's not allowed to create its own security software. Oops, we don't go there. So teaching kids, more kids, how to program is actually a clever, smart, wonderful thing, and it makes them smarter, and it teaches them how to think algorithmically in a largely algorithmic age. an era when the algorithms are running the show. They're running your big data, they're running your stock market, they're running your economy. You should know what an algorithm is. An algorithm is just, remember long division, when you learn how to do long division? That's an algorithm. When you plug it in, you don't really know quite how it works, but it works, and you put the number, and you do the thing. The minute kids in 4th grade get the long division algorithm, that's the minute they should be taught programming. Just take it and say, okay, now you know how to do an algorithm. Algorithms are these repetitive tasks that make you feel kind of stupid because you just do it again and again. That's what computers are for. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, that's what they're doing all this time. Right, they use algorithms. So take 2 weeks, have them write the program on how to teach a really simple computer how to do long division. Their lives will be different forever. They'll look at Facebook and go, this is algorithms. What are these algorithms doing? How are they working? That's all they need. Start with that little bit. But the second thing, the second way to teach programming, which is almost more important at this point, certainly to our culture as we hinge from the industrial age to the digital age, is programming as a liberal art. Right? Programming as a liberal art really just means being able to think critically about the programs, the interfaces, the platforms you're using. To be able to, you know how to walk into a room at a car dealership and go, this is a manipulative space, I can feel it, there's no windows, who's that manager guy sitting? You know their tricks now. You walk into a digital space and you go, oh, this is cool, what do they want me to do? Put my name, put my number, put my thing. I mean, God, you go to the Gap and you give them your zip code every time you go. Why do they want your zip code? It's big data, right? Because once they have your zip code and your credit card, they can triangulate your data and they know they can get your file. Zip code, oh, you want my zip code? Okay. It's going to help you serve me better. That's part of living in a digital environment, right? It's being able to be a thinking human on a program landscape. Right? And to be a thinking human on a program landscape, that's why I wrote this book, right? Is to be able to think about the biases. What is the bias of this space? What is the bias of this medium? So that you can work with them rather than against them. Right? So that you can make your technology conform to your priorities rather than optimizing yourself for the machine. The minute we're optimizing ourselves for our machines, we're no longer in charge. It's no longer our world. Then we're living in a computer world. We might as well just be slaves to them. And they don't care. They're not alive. They don't think. They're machines doing algorithms repetitively and loose. They're stupid. They're stupid. They're very fast, but they're stupid. Right? So what does that mean? Right? To understand the biases of the space, it's really simple. Right? It's in the early days, back on the well, right? Which is the bulletin board. My first place online that I used to hang out. The way a conversation worked was asynchronously. That means it was outside time. It's the first real bias of technology I talk about in this book. Digital bias happens outside time. Digital technology, it's just a sequence of events. So the well, you'd log into the well with a modem. It was this thing that you plugged into the phone. Anyway, you'd log in, you would download your conversation. You would log off the well, and then you'd read the whole conversation. Right? It wasn't just you, it was all these people talking about something. About computers, about Iran, about the president. You'd read the whole conversation, and then you'd think for a couple of hours, how do I want to respond? How do I want to participate in this conversation? And you take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to craft this brilliant paragraph that you would then upload into the conversation and see. You spend so long on that paragraph that you sounded as smart as Christopher Hitchens or William F. Buckley in that paragraph. I mean, imagine this. The internet was a place where you sounded smarter than you were in real life. Right? But that's because we understood the asynchronous bias of digital technology. We understood that email was something that you get to in your own time, unlike a phone call, which was happening in the moment. Rather than treating it as we do now, largely because of the way these things are programmed by corporations to make us use them all the time, the email comes in, it vibrates, we check it. Right? We assume the posture of an ambulance driver or a 911 operator or an air traffic controller. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. There's a text. It's not like grandma's dead or something, right? That's when they used to break into the phone call was because grandma was going in the hospital. Remember those times? Yeah. That's the only. Now they break into everything all the time with nothing. Someone tweeted you. Johnny friended you. Who? Right? Right? By working against the bias of the technology. So for me, digital literacy in that liberal artsy sense is understanding that. It's understanding the biases of the technology so that you use them appropriately rather than inappropriately. right? It's like the second bias is place. Digital technology is really good for long-distance communication, really bad for up-close communication, right? If you're sitting next to the person, don't text them, right? You actually just talk, right? Because there's this other 94% of human communication that happens non-verbally. And you get to look in their eyes, you get to see them, which is cool. This other person thing, as opposed to this, which is less fun. But right, I've been to classrooms. Right? I went to this model United Nations class that they had done as a thing with costumes and people every year, and they decided this year they were going to do it virtually. But not virtually from their homes, virtually in that they took a room, they filled it with computers, all the kids went into the room, right? They lived in dorms and did whatever. They went into this room, they went online, they logged into Second Life, and they did a simulation of the United Nations in Second Life while they're in the same room together. They're like, oh, Dr. Rushkoff, tell us what you think about our use of technology. It's like, well, should I tell you the truth? Right. But when we use digital technology just as an extension of business as usual, without understanding its biases, without understanding how it is fundamentally different from our industrial age technologies, when we try to start digital businesses and digital exchanges without understanding that they are fundamentally different from an industrial age economy, right? We end up extending an obsolete era by kind of pumping it with steroids. It's like taking speed to stay up after you should actually be put to sleep. Right? We can keep it going a little bit longer, right? We can play this game on Wall Street. Right? We can extend an obsolete Wall Street system with algorithms just a little bit longer, suck a little bit more value out of people, get a few more hours of work out of people, a few more hours of shopping on Thanksgiving Day. Instead of Black Friday, it's Black Thursday. Damn it, that's Thanksgiving. Leave us alone. Right? But but the economy is depending on it. All right, I'll do my duty. I'll put down the cranberry sauce and get up and go buy something. You know, it's going to get to the point where we're not buying Thanksgiving dinner anymore. And so, oh no, the turkey purchases have gone down because people are going out Thursdays. Right? That's the way steroids work. Right? Instead, though, what I really believe, and this is the chance here, the opportunity here, and then we'll talk amongst ourselves. What we have here is an opportunity for people to create and exchange value, right? To create and exchange value themselves. It goes beyond getting jobs. It goes beyond trying to get, you know, the point of learning digital technology is not to be skilled, to be able to get a digital technology job at a digital technology company. Right? These companies are dying anyway. They're going away. That's a short-term strategy. Even the idea that, okay, we're going to restore manufacturing by now having high-tech, I understand, it's to stave off it, to get a decade out of it. We're going to put a high-tech manufacturing facility here so that companies will hire us. They'll get a bank to give them money to hire us to make things in their factory. But if you really look at the digital age, where is it going? Where is it really going? It's going towards decentralized manufacturing. You know, if you've ever heard of MakerBot or 3D printing, right? MakerBot and 3D printing are these things, and you can just stick one in your garage. And Jeff Bezos at Amazon is going to put one in your garage, probably for free. Put this thing in your garage, and then you're going to pay him on Amazon. Oh, I want one of those. Okay, we'll print one out for you. Go to your garage. It'll be done in 6 minutes. And you're going to have your screwdriver, your tape measure, or your ice cream cone, or whatever the thing is you want. It's going to be printed right there. Right? It'll start small, just with plastic doodads, and get more and more, and metal printing and everything else, and ceramic and polymers and God knows what. So once everything's being printed everywhere, then what is there left? Where's there left for you to create value? Right? The only place to create value finally then, in a digital landscape, is with your imagination. The only thing you're left to sell is the plans. The only thing left to sell is the code that you're going to get someone else to put in their 3D printer to make that new thing. Right? And it's scary in a way, because what we're saying is, yeah, we're moving into a creative economy. It doesn't mean creative class Birkenstock people. I'm not talking about that. I mean an economy that's actually driven by creativity and innovation. That's where it's going to go. There's going to be no place for unskilled labor. Unskilled labor is an artifact of the industrial age. There used to be no such thing as unskilled labor. There used to be skilled labor. People made a shoe. Right? You studied with another guy for years to be able to make a shoe. You were his apprentice. right? When the industrial age came around, it was not to make more shoes in less time. It was to make shoes with less skill, to pay people less. So you had your Royal Shoe Chartered Corporation that was now the exclusive maker of shoes. They don't want to hire a shoemaker. They want to hire an illegal immigrant from the town square, which is what they did. To come in, I'm going to teach you how to nail this one thing into the heel, then pass it on to that guy. I'm going to train you in 15 minutes. So if you want more money or you give me a hard time, you're out on the street, I'm getting another one, training him in 15 minutes. Right? That's labor. That's when you're selling your time instead of your skill. Right? That's when you're selling hours instead of value that you're creating. In a digital age, in a peer-to-peer society, which is what we're moving towards, we're going to be exchanging value directly with one another. Right? And that's going to be scary and different and strange, but the beauty of it, and this is why we got to try to get smart rather than stupid, the beauty of it is the only thing that's going to bound us is the limits of our human imagination. It's really the only thing that can hold us back, is the limits of the human imagination. Which is why we have to treat it, not our technology. We have to treat it as our most precious natural resource. Especially as we build these environments, especially as we go in them. Right? What is the role of the human here? How does this interface affect my humanity? How does this draw out my humanity? How does this bring out my compassion, my connection with other people? I don't believe in the singularity. I don't believe technology will surpass us, and start thinking. But I do believe we can turn ourselves into drones pretty easily. If we use all of our manpower, all of our creativity, and all of our money creating technologies that are designed to lull us into a complacent, addictive stupor. Right? And that's why what I want us to do at every simple decision point is think, how is this human? How is this human? How does this enhance my human adaptive, my human creative, my human imaginative capacity? And if we do that, we can thrive and prosper in a digital age. Okay, that's enough of me. Thank you. I was just trying to randomly hit 8, and I hit 803, so that was pretty good, pretty close. So we can talk amongst ourselves, right? We can speak freely. It's only being televised. Yes?
So it sounds to me, as you've discussed, that we need to move to where we become a more distributed economy. So it's kind of back to the concept that E.F. Schumacher threw out, small is beautiful, and becoming more localized. And creating those synergistic types of relationships in a much smaller, more geographic, closer geographic region. Could you expand on that a little bit and give us your ideas on that?
I think what we're moving into is a two-tier economy. And I don't mean two-tier in terms of class. I mean two-tier in the sense of local economy and a long-distance economy. It was really what some of the people who devised the euro intended for the euro until it got screwed up. And it was what was going on in the guilds of Florence in the late Middle Ages before the Renaissance. It was what was going on in the bazaar in France before Philip the Fair came and screwed things up there. That what you have is basically a local short-distance economy that supplies your basic needs, right? The stuff that can be done here. Your food, your clothes, your shoes, your babysitting, your health care, all that happens from other people in your community, which ultimately can become 50, 60, 70% of your real economy. But then there are these other things like iPhones, which for the time being anyway, there are these things that are really the product of international supply chain management and big consortiums and deals. Your auto mechanic can work locally with his labor, but needs long-distance currencies and economics to buy the parts from Mopar or whoever it is. Are they still around? Really? Yeah. To put in the car. Right? So what we're going to see, I think, is various kinds of local currencies, right? Transacted with cell phones, which are as secure as the U.S. Mint at this point in terms of your authentication. You're going to have a kind of a local currency that you use to buy your food, to join your CSA, to be part of your local health club, to do your babysitting club. All that stuff can be handled locally right, in a favor bank. So this is with a currency then that you don't save up and accumulate and get interest on and stick in the bank. This is with basically a kind of a currency, a balance that you want to keep around zero, right? Because you're going to get credits for doing stuff, you're going to give credits for getting stuff, but you want to keep it about zero so that you're contributing about to your community what you're getting back from your community. That's the way it works. That's a kind of currency that's biased towards what we call the velocity of money. It's trying to have a high velocity so that you have lots of transactions and lots of stuff going on. People baking for each other, bringing stuff, massaging each other, getting things, teaching, babysitting, all those kinds of things that we could just keep doing for each other more and more and more and more and more. Right? You're going to be looking for more and more ways. What services can I do to get more things? What can I do? What can I do? There's all that. And we have all the time in the world to do that because, frankly, we don't really have that much else to do anymore. You know, the job crisis in America, I spoke about this afternoon, the job crisis in America is not a problem of not having good people. The job crisis in America is having really nothing for people to do. We have enough stuff. How many more housing starts do we need to judge the health of the health of our economy is the destruction of our forest, right? At this point. Right? Nobody needs a job. Right? I don't need a job. I want stuff. Right? I want the stuff that a job gets me. I don't need a job. A job is, again, is an industrial age artifact. What we want is stuff, and we have enough stuff. We're tearing down houses in California. We're burning food every week from the USDA. We have to keep market prices high. And meanwhile, we got homeless and starving people. It's like, no, something's confusing. No, you cannot have that house because you don't have a job. So we have to figure out a way to get you a job, to do something we don't need, so we can justify giving you this house. But because we can't, we're going to rip it down. Yeah.
So how do you break that insecurity that currently happens in society where you're dependent upon your job for your house, your family support network, your social status, right? That's a paradigm shift.
Well, we break it in one of two ways. One, the system becomes unsustainable. It breaks itself, and we start doing things for each other because we need to live, right? You know, we get like the Jodes. It gets grapes of Wrathy. You know, that's the last time we had successful local currencies in America. You know, and we're seeing them come back in Lansing, Michigan, and Detroit, and places that have been ravaged. You're seeing some, and in weird New Age places. Right? Those are sort of the two places you see this. People that are willing to experiment, people that have to experiment. The real way, the better way, is to reacquaint people with their skills. Right? If you've been sitting in a cubicle doing mortgage adjustment, marketing strategy, supervision, you look at the real world and go, I actually don't know how to do anything. You know, if we were actually in Walking Dead, they would eat me first. Because they don't need a mortgage insurance adjustment supervisor right now, do they? You know, so people are going to get, you know, it's the maker movement, but people are just making stuff in Etsy and crafts of all kinds, people getting into gardening and learning how. I mean, when my daughter saw a carrot come out of the ground at 7 years old, she was like, oh my God. I thought they came on the shelf. You know? They don't come from the supermarket. You know, but that little bit of connection to that, you know, it's not a bad thing, you know, to have to learn some real stuff. You know, so that the more sustainable and real our skill-based feels, you know, the less uncomfortable I think will be. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about possible long-term effects of a generation of children that are raised interacting and learning social skills through their phone as opposed to going face-to-face?
I'm concerned about it. You know, originally I wrote this book way back when called Playing the Future, saying that adults are immigrants in the digital terrain, and the kids are natives. So the kids are going to learn the language first. They're going to understand all this, and all these efforts to market, which we will fall into, they won't, because they're going to be the native speakers. And it turned out the opposite, right? It turned out that because kids were raised in a world where these were a given circumstance, they accepted them at face value. Right? So I am concerned, because especially if they're being taught and trained and there's millions and millions of dollars behind getting them to prefer the SMS to the face-to-face, then what happens is they move into a kind of an Asperger's-like, not Asperger's real, but an Asperger's-like relationship to other people, where body language and eye contact and all the kinds of things that fire your mirror neurons and let you know that you're developing rapport with other people, those things won't function for them because they won't have had sufficient face time, right? Especially when we go into digital classrooms and we have kids staring at screens and things instead of using class time to be in the room with the other bodies, right? I'm into the upside down class where if you're going to go home and do your homework, do that on the computer, but in the classroom, be with the bodies to actually develop that. When you walk into a room of people now and they're on their devices, there's a tangible something missing. Right, that group cohesion, that thing, call it woo, but we're on the West Coast, I'm allowed to be that way. There was there was a group cohesion, there was an actual energy, something going on in you would regard a group that you don't get, anymore. So that's of concern to me. The thing that gives me hope is, you see young people leaving Facebook in droves now. And they're not just doing it because their parents got there. They're doing it because they recognize that this is a very heavy, stultifying, predictive world where their actions are highly circumscribed, and that it's everything they do is going down on their permanent record, right? So they're going into Snapchat, where you send a picture and it's gone in 5 seconds, and that feels more liberating, more light. It feels much more digital to them because it goes. They're not, everything they're doing is not being etched in the side of the Parthenon. So that gives me some hope, right? That there's that. But yeah, it's a matter of with young people, it's reacquainting them. I hate to say it like this. It sounds dirty, but I don't mean it that way. Well, maybe I'm reacquainting them with their bodies. They're listening to MP3s with little earbuds. MP3 algorithms at 64 bits or something. They're not listening to music, right? They're listening to algorithms recreating some of the sonic experience of music. But music is this thing that hits your body, right? Even with a stereo and a record, there's a speaker that's hitting your body, or you're in a room with drums, right? It's moving the air around your thing. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's aboriginal, it's real, it brings you into the moment. So I'm concerned that way. Yeah, do you, then you. Yeah.
Are you telling us that the development of the Industrial Revolution stimulated labor unions as well? The workers had to organize to protect themselves.
They did. They did. I mean, and in theory, the only reason they needed to create these large sort of abstracted entities of labor was because they were fighting against these giant abstracted phantoms of corporatism. But because it's an abstract landscape, they will always win. They will always win in a balance sheet reality. And online, they will always win. Online corporations have the home field advantage. Make no mistake about it, because they are abstract, they are not alive. But in the real world, we have the home field advantage. This is the only place where we do. We're the humans. This is on planet Earth, on terra firma. When you're incarnate is when you've got the advantage over it. And that's why going local, connecting with other people, actually doing things, gives us so much power. Productive capability, digital. What does digits mean? It means the digits. Yes, digital is labor. Of course it is. Digital is value creation. Digital is reconnecting people to the value they create. What the industrial age did intentionally was disconnect people from the value they create and force people instead to work in time. Working in time is what? Slavery. Literally. This is not my time. This is not my time. What is that? Yeah, Green Man.
You talked about the importance of teaching kids coding, and I was wondering, later on you said that imagination is where the value is going to be at. And so do you have any ideas as a society how we would cultivate imagination and really start to teach people to use that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to say how not to inhibit imagination, than what the magic formula for growing imagination is. For me, the prerequisite to imagination is either genuine, alone, contemplative experience or genuine conspiracy. Conspiracy meaning breathing with others is what conspiracy means. Conspire, breathe with others. And usually it's a combination of the two. Breathe with others for a little bit, get all stimulated and have that thing, and then go off and have true silence, true self-time. You know, and helping people, I was going to say value that, but no. These days, helping people tolerate both conspiracy and being alone. Reteaching people how to be with other humans in a room, looking at each other. It's so hard for people now. They don't want to look at each other. They don't even want to talk to each other on the phone if you can text, right? But what they've lost is that the thing you had to say used to be the excuse to call the person. Now it's the reason, you know, to call the person. Right now, so if it's the reason, then if I can do it without calling the person, let me just do that. So we're ordering and commanding each other around, right? And we lose that. But yeah, I would say it's creating small groups. It's creating weird little collaborations. It's sort of the easy way to do it. And the way to repress it, right? The way to prevent it is really to walk blindly through the new digital landscape in which we all live, unaware of who's trying to program me and who's trying to get something and what value is being extracted. How am I spending this time? Why am I spending these hours on Farmville? Why does this feel so incomplete? Why am I still doing it then? What's going on here? You know, there's this sense that we do it. It's like these experiences are tuned the way cheese doodles were tuned. Right? Cheese doodles were a food. They're a product of the laboratory. They were designed. They're a designed food to get you to eat more and more of them, but they don't fill you. Right? They're light and puffy, but they have MSG, and they're kind of tangy and crunch. They're a designed food. Right? Just as our internet environments are designed environments, our internet products, our digital products. This Netflix thing that they did, speaking of big data, my friend, you're over there. I'm just trying to hurt him now. It's all right. Netflix came up with this movie that a lot of us saw, House of Cards, right? House of Cards was a big data designed television experience. They looked at all that data, you know, they recommend, if you like psychological thrillers with, you know, female heroines, and you will also, you know that whole thing they do on Netflix, where they analyze you? They used all their big data analysis, and they found out, oh, look, we got Kevin Spacey, he'll agree to be in something. So let's cross-match. Turns out, people who like Kevin Spacey, amazingly, also like David Fincher as a director. Who cares why? Let's get David Fincher to direct. And what kind of things do they like? Oh, they like political intrigue and blah, blah, blah. There's this one in England that looks like the kind of thing that they would like if it were to come here. Let's take their scripts and try. And they create this synthetic television experience, House of Cards. I watched House of Cards. Many of you probably did too. Interesting. It was a compelling but soulless thing. There was nothing...